The Magna Carta becomes a magnificent 64-paragraph document that for the first time in the history of the world puts some constraints on the king, some constraints on the queen, some constraints on central government. And when you do that, you open up a little spot of freedom. And when you open up that little spot of freedom, then we began to see in the 15th through the 18th century the rise of capitalism. And then in the 16th and 17th and 18th century, we begin to see some economic growth, the rise of Western Europe. And then in the 19th and 20th century, we see the rise of the United States. And now that we're into the 21st century, we'll see the rise of the rest. Some of the world is doing pretty well, for sure. But half of the world's population only makes $2 a day. 3 billion people on the planet have never used a telephone. The printing press made us all readers. The radio made us all listeners. Television made us all viewers. But the internet made us all producers. That's where the world is today. I think most economists would say the two most important variables to produce prosperity, besides, of course, freedom and that sort of thing, but is taxes and tariffs. So you have to talk about taxes and you have to talk about tariffs. And we must get back to a free trade world because it's going to be win-win mutual gains from voluntary exchange. Our think tank, the National Center for Policy Analysis, we've monitored 165 countries over the last 22 years. 22 years ago, there were 17 countries in the world that we would call Lockean or partly Lockean in freedom. Free or mostly free is how we would define it. 17 countries out of 165. And in our last index of economic freedom, 22 years later, the year is now 2008, there are 81 countries on the planet that are free or mostly free. Countries that are heading towards freedom and markets and capitalism and prosperity. 10 years ago, Romania had an 80% tax rate. Today, 15%. 10 years ago, Romania had 22% tariffs on free trade. Now, 5%. As this growth goes on, it's a win-win for the United States. When they do well, we will even do better, as a matter of fact. When Taiwan and South Korea were third world countries, who cared? But when Taiwan and South Korea began to grow economically, who ranks as our number 4, number 7 agricultural export countries? Win-win. Mutual gains from voluntary exchange. Boy, have these last 25 years been sweet. Stable price level. This has been the nicest 25-year period of time from 1982 right up until 2007. That's been the sweetest economic times in the history of America and the history of the world. And here's what happened. Bubbles everywhere. An energy bubble. Energy going to $140 a barrel. Wheat bubbling. Corn. Corn should be about $2 or $3 a bushel. Corn went to $8 a bushel. Steel went through the roof. Copper went through the roof. Commodities went through the roof. But then, when you really talk about the roof, you got to talk about housing. Look at when 1,000 babysitters in San Francisco buy $1 million homes, you've got a bubble. And all those mortgages have gone toxic. All those mortgages. So, here's where we are. Car dealers can't sell any cars. People cannot get credit. They're going to hold on to their car longer. Restaurants are firing people by the tens of thousands. And you just go around the bend. It is not pretty. When countries start heading to deflation, this is very hard to stop. Why is it hard to stop? Because everybody takes on the mentality, I'll wait. I'd like to buy a house, but I'll wait. Why? Because it's going to go lower. 2 months later, I'll wait some more. And you've got everybody in a wait mode, and so you're really getting kind of liquidity lockup, banks kind of unwilling to lend, their toxic assets going down, they need assets, they don't need more loans, etc., etc. So we are in a temporary bind, and that's why Bernanke wants to do what he's going to do. What do we do? Well, not only is population growth good, yes, let's make sure we stabilize the price level. Let's make sure that the Fed doesn't lower rates, which they've got them right down there right now. And I tell you, the minute they feel that the economy's coming around, they better raise those rates a bit. They better not leave them there. It just adds too much liquidity to the economy, and we'll have inflation like you have never seen. So hopefully the Fed can learn a lesson from a horrible mistake of keeping the federal funds rate too low, too long, creating that liquidity, creating those bubbles, creating this mortgage crisis, etc., etc. Do you even whisper the thought of a tax increase on the top 5% of income earners? That's insanity. You all top 5% income earners just happen to be the people that create the jobs, that create all the stuff that's going on, and to attack you? What's my point? My point is not until we come to the idea that we must and we have to lower corporate tax rates. You can't succeed by putting a pause button on free trade. That's a killer. You cannot succeed by taxing the rich. That's a killer. In the meantime, all of you, I love what the mayor said. We got to get up. We've got to smile. We've got to fight hard. We've got to be encouraging. We've got to say that 13 times America has gone down to the mat, and 13 times America has picked itself up, got back in the battle, and made it a fight. If that doesn't describe America, I don't know what does. We can't continue to do it as we're doing it today. Why? Because the way we do it today, 5 out of every $6 does not come from our own pocket, spent in healthcare. 5 out of 6. 5 out of $6 comes from Medicare, Medicaid, third-party payer, an insurance company, an employer, anybody but me. If it's free, there's no tempering of demand. Come in. So the only way you can temper it is on the supply side. And that is long queues. Have to wait a half a year for a hip replacement. Half a year for a knee replacement. Have to wait half a year for some kidney dialysis. Come into the emergency room and have to wait 7, 10, 15 hours. Ask Canada. Ask the UK. Ask New Zealand. Now, friends, I've got to tell you something. Single payer, nationalized health care works just fine when your demographics is young. As in Canada, it's been over the years, and in the UK over the past. When your young demographics, it's easy. Inoculations, flu shots, blah, blah, and man, you're on your way to having health care solved for youngsters. So when you're young. But when you get 55 and older, your pharmaceuticals goes like this, and your needs. I mean, kidney dialysis, heart replacements, more CAT scans, MRIs, blah, 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 high-cost medicine. The last time Mandy and I were in London, the London Times had a report card on all London hospitals. Out of 300 London hospitals, a few got a D, almost all got D minuses, and most got Fs. Most hospitals in London, hey, if you're going to come into the hospital, bring your own pillow and bring your own Tylenol. Excuse me. So what's your point there? These national health care countries are all saying, this ain't working. See, we got to move to a world where benefits,